My biggest takeaway has been that you got to be resilient. Especially entrepreneurship is about resilience. It's about riding the bad times more than the good ones. I've just been so humbled over the last few years. And when I say Spotnana is a 20-year journey, I really mean that. Just had so many things that I wish I could do differently. But today I realize that I'm glad they're not, because those have helped build the muscle for today what we're doing. And it's just something that you got to keep pivoting, keep learning, and just being resilient to ride that out, because it's really a mental muscle that you have to build internally. Because sometimes when good things happen, no one realizes as to what it has taken to get there.
Welcome to Entrepreneur's Handbook Podcast, where we share inspiring startup stories with practical takeaways for you, the listener. Today we have with us Sarosh Waghmar, who's the founder of Spotnana. They're revolutionizing travel by providing travel as a service with the most modern technology. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Amardeep, for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. And Happy New Year to you as well.
Happy New Year. So you mentioned before how people consider Spotnana an overnight success, when in reality, you said that it's been over 20 years to get you to where you are today. But if you get even further back, what made you want to become an entrepreneur in the first place, start your own business?
I think it goes back to early days in 2000. I was for 2 years a consultant with Deloitte. And this was the heyday of the dot-com boom. Back then, I realized that I was just interested in building something, and especially around technology. And that's when I made my first foray into starting a tech company. Little did I realize that in 2 years, everything went up in flames because of the dot-com crash. But I think intrinsically, deep down, I knew while at Deloitte that, as much as I enjoyed the consulting experience, and I'm really, really thankful for that experience that I got at Deloitte, I knew that I just wanted to start something on my own. So it's this sort of itch that you have, how do you create, how do you build something? And, it's people try to sensationalize it or make it very sexy, but I assure you, it's more than hard work. It's just, you got to keep going at it, keep going at it. And I think 20 years on, I'm still struggling, still trying. So, you have to develop that muscle at the end of the day, that if you really want to do something, it takes time. There's nothing like an overnight success. You look at some of the best companies out there, nothing happened in 2 years or nothing happened in 5 years. And it's like an arc for you truly to measure success. It's like, even some of the world's biggest companies today are constantly evolving, and it's a journey. There's no destination that you start off, and there's no arrival gate that you get to. It's just one of those things that you constantly figure out how to continue to move forward day in and day out. So I think when people say about Spotnana that, this happened in 2 years, I'm like, I try to assure them that it's nowhere close to 2 years. It's been my life work over 20 years, and it's still a work in progress, as I like to say.
In those early days, what was the initial idea you had when you started your own business? What were you trying to do there? Because initially you didn't want to raise venture capital funding either, right? It was all bootstrapped and you're going to do it yourself.
I think the initial idea from all day one was, travel fundamentally is broken. Let me break it down from a layman's perspective. If I were to ask you, do you shop on Amazon? Probably say, yes, Rosh, I shop on Amazon. I shop on Amazon all day long. And then if I were to role play further and said, when you're about to click on the buy now button on Amazon, would you go to 10 other websites and compare prices before clicking it back on Amazon? You look at me like, no, why would I do that? No, I just trust what I see on Amazon and I move forward. Such a ridiculous question, even for you to ask me, Sarosh. No one does that. We just purchase it and move forward. I'm like, okay, great. If I role play with you further and I say, 2 weeks from now, you and I are going on a business trip. We're going from London to Dubai and onwards to Tokyo and coming back. We need to stay at these hotels. We have a couple of meetings at these locations. What would be the first thing you'd do? You'd go online, check at 5 different websites from BA to Virgin to Kayak to Expedia, trying to get the best possible fare, because you know what you want. You know which hotels you want to stay, and you constantly compare prices. And if we go one step further and say, forget this being a business trip, even if this was a personal trip with your family, you in fact will look and shop more, because intrinsically, deep down, somewhere you believe there's a deal to be had when it comes to travel. Why is it as we as human beings, when it comes to travel versus any other e-commerce experience, we just feel that we have to shop and we have to find a hack? There has to be a better fare. There is a reason for that, that there are better fares at X location versus Y, but this is really the underpinnings of the industry, the infrastructure in which some of the world's largest travel companies run is an ancient infrastructure that was built in 1950s and 60s, which has been powered by the global distribution systems, companies such as Sabre, Amadeus, etc. And they've done a phenomenal job over the last several years to get us where we are. But buying habits have changed. There's a lot of personalization. And there's no way for an airline to recognize who you are and what you want when you want it, which is why you have all these different prices and this arbitrage and slew of other issues of delays and cancellations and everything else that is broken in this journey. Our whole premise when we started Spotnana is not only how do you fix the servicing aspect of it, but how do you build a better tech stack that you can provide an end-to-end experience. If anything else that you consume today, whether it's Netflix or whether it's Spotify or whether it's even on Amazon, that experience at the end of the day is pleasurable. You don't have to think twice. But when it comes to travel, there are just so many intermediaries, which is why you have a broken experience. And imagine that London to Dubai ticket, which you spent a fortune on buying in business class, and you're at the Dubai counter with Emirates and you tell them, I need to make a change. After spending that money, they look at you and say, oh, I'm sorry, I cannot help you, Amardeep. You need to call up your travel agency. And you're like, I don't understand. This is a £10,000 ticket. It's your airline, your seat. And you're telling me to talk to somebody else. Why is that? Because the agent at the airport, the tech stack and what they're looking, the system of record that they're looking on their screen versus what you have on your mobile versus what your travel agency has booked, they're all completely different. Spotnana's premise from day one is how do you build this from ground up, build this unparalleled experience. And the only way to do this and connect all these systems of records is clean up the plumbing and build the entire stack. And the fundamental difference is we've kept the stack open. What does that mean? If you truly want to be a platform at the end of the day, you got to make yourself available to others so others can build on top of it and innovate on top of it and add more value. The current ecosystem and the technology that's available in travel, it's all closed. It's just not a place where you can innovate on top of it. And it's just band-aids over band-aids and things cobbled together with the existing infrastructure. Our whole premise is how do you make this available? So tomorrow it could be a corporation that could be using your platform. Tomorrow it could be a supplier or channel partners that could build a travel solution on top of you. And really that's what the approach for Spotnana has been from day one. How do you make this available to everybody?
As you say, the problem there, it just makes it's I have flashbacks or like traumatic memories of where something like this happened to me. Where, for example, in the pandemic, when it initially started, I was in Botswana, and I had to try and get back to London again, but you couldn't get hold of the travel agency, you couldn't get hold of the airline, you were just stuck, and it was so frustrating. Like, why can't we just talk to somebody, or like why can't the systems just do what we want them to do? And it's obviously they put these barriers in place, and sometimes to try to stop you from changing or to increasing because they want to try and lock you in. And as a consumer, you just feel so trapped.
For the cost. Like you lose your phone on Uber, I still can't call Uber. I still have to go through the app and then the driver will call you back. Or Amazon, is there a button to return anything on Amazon? No, it never was. There's no one to call. You just go click, print it, and drop off your package, and someone comes, picks it up, and you're done. Amazon is such a seamless experience. They have some of the few people that have solved for the last mile. Why can't we do that for travel? Travel is just such a big thing in our lives, people think that travel would be wiped out. But I assure you, in spite of being one of the most decimated industries over the last 2 years, the way it has come back, people are struggling to find seats and the prices are just exorbitant today when you look at travel. So it's a human emotion, it connects all of us. So I don't see it going away anywhere. And the need for this pleasurable experience is more so now than ever it was before.
Yeah, because the truth is that when people have those kind of experiences, it puts you off so much, and people have this anxiety about going on away because of all of this like chaos you have to deal with. But like you said, it's all because of legacy systems in so many ways. And as you explain what you explain, this like why didn't this exist? It's exact. I think it's always the best ideas is when you hear something and somebody says an idea, it's like yeah, like that should be there. So it's like amazing what you're building, and on the actual underlying level there. One of the reasons why it didn't exist in the past is because it's so difficult to do something like that, right? How did you go about that? How did you build something from the ground up and look at those different systems and think, okay, here's how we can make it better than what's currently available?
So I think there are two reasons. One, it is difficult, like anything in life. I think so. When you want to build great things, it does take time. But more importantly, it's just the barriers to entry. The existing players, the economics and the incentives that are provided to the existing players is why they don't want to change. The status quo is happy making money the way they traditionally have. What's happened is airlines have realized, like anyone else, is we have an option to develop our own APIs. We have an option to personalize content for our own travelers. We can do that on our existing websites. You can do this on BA's website where it'll give you five different versions of economy or American or United. But in the traditional corporate world or business travel world, an airline doesn't know who you are because you're going through so many intermediaries. And the intermediaries keep your personal information and don't share it back with the airline. Only after it's ticketed, and then after that, you'll apply a frequent flyer number, and then you potentially could get an upgrade. Otherwise, in that shopping process, no one knows who you are. Unlike Amazon, while you're shopping, recommendations are coming to you left, right, and center. They know who you are, they know what you're clicking, not only what you're buying, what you did not buy when it was available. That mindset just was not there. And the reason for that is some of the biggest travel companies in the world are not tech companies, they're service providers, and they depend on third party tech. And all of this third party tech, people have used a feature and built a company around it. No one's bothered to build out the entire tech stack. And they've used systems that were such as the GDS, which was actually built for shopping and search. They made it their Snowflake, they made it their Dropbox, they made it their Salesforce. And just think about it. Imagine if you had Salesforce with an architecture of 1960s. It's just not physically possible to make those systems scale and do what you need them to do, which is why they've cobbled things together. And the incentives that they get from various folks within the industry and partners, they have no incentive to innovate. I'm happy making money this way. And unfortunately, the only person who gets left behind with a broken experience is the traveler. And this is like one of those few industries where some of the world's biggest companies have to use legacy technology because there's no one else out there innovating something better. You're just stuck with it, and like, I have no choice. Our whole premise is, how do we bring about choice, and how do we make sure that everyone has a seat at the table, not only the traveler but the suppliers too, who want this change. Airlines, hotels, cars, everyone wants to be able to personalize content and give it to you, but the ecosystem prevents them from doing that, because at the end of the day, you need someone to consume it too, right? And if the volume is held by a few folks only, but if you build this platform from ground up, and that's why I keep saying, someone's got to clean the gutter. And that's what Spotnana has decided to do, is we got to fix the plumbing, build it from ground up, and build the entire stack so that others can use it and can add value on top of it.
And in terms of it scaling this, right? Because once you've got that idea, you've got to then build it, you've got to get your first customers. But like, how did you get those first customers with, like, when you've got the early tech and it's just a prototype in many ways, you've got to get it to a certain level? Because with something like travel, people are very worried, for example, it's like, if it doesn't work, then they mess up, or if they get to the airport and it's not working. How did you build that trust with the early customers?
So I think this is where the journey is a little bit different compared to the traditional tech entrepreneur. I've been doing this for 20 years, using third party tools and technologies and cobbling things together. In Jan of 2020, when started this company, my co-founder and I decided that we had a very clear idea of what we needed to build because of the experience that I've had previously in scaling several travel management companies. So we knew what the problem set was early on. February, COVID happens, the world goes the other way. We're very fortunate that we had a set of investors, and especially Steve Singh, the former founder and CEO of Concur, who was on our board, as not only one of the largest shareholders, but has become our chairman as well. And he really leaned in early days and said, irrespective of what's going on out there, just let's focus on product, control what we can. And we kept building. And in the first 9 months, when we launched our first iteration, I think in the first 3 weeks, we got 6 to 8 large customers who expressed interest. And that's really when we recognized that people are looking at travel very differently once COVID happened. The problems that were inherently there just bubbled up to the top. People were anyways frustrated, but post COVID, people had no idea of their exchanges, their refunds, the money and credits that was owed to them from hotel cancellations, from airline cancellations. There's just so much money lying on the table, and corporations are frustrated that no one could give them a report and tell them, here are all your travelers, here are all the pending credits. Airlines owe you this money versus the other way around because they cancel the flights. So that visibility, and as it is, the experience has been painful previously. So it's not like it was anything was great. The system was crumbling, and that's when we started building with that in our mindset from day one. Is like we knew we had to build this from ground up, build not a better stack, but solve for the real problem. And the real problem was removing the dependencies on the existing players, especially on the way the economics were lined up, that really skewed it in favor of travel companies and not the customer. Our whole premise was building the stack in such a way that the customer benefit as well as the suppliers. We brought everyone, gave them a seat at the table. And when that started resonating a lot more, you can have great technology, but you need to, at the end of the day, business is how you drive product. You need to have the business fundamentals in place. And we knew from day one that this is what we wanted to build and how we are going to go about it. So there's a lot of experience in from my previous life that we carried into this. Hopefully make less mistakes here this time around than previously, and build it correctly for everybody. And I think that's really what resonated with customers early on. And we've been very fortunate that we've had amazing set of investors throughout this journey now, approaching 3 years, that have supported us, and customers who have bought into the platform, and most of all the vision of what we're building, because this is a long road ahead, because you're trying to append an industry that has been very comfortable and been operating in a particular manner. I'm pretty confident that no one's going to just come and allow us to eat their lunch. So there's, as I keep telling the team, war is coming. So it's a long way for us to go.
Yeah, like you said, with the war coming there, it's obviously, like, as in it's the same thing I'm thinking there as well. All these different airlines who are reliant on this incumbent technology. Like, I've had the same experience. So in a previous life, I was a CRM consultant. So I used to go into these massive companies and see how broken everything was under the covers. And as like somebody fairly young coming into it, like, how is it like this? How, like, when you can see how amazing the tech is out there, why are such big companies relying on this still? And it's because people at the top, it's in their interest to just keep things simple for their lives, right, in their bubbles, because if they can kind of keep things running smoothly, then it's okay. Whereas if you have to try and do a whole new project, then you've got to have all these moving parts, and that can be extra work for them. And it's like trying to break that bubble. But like you said, if you can show, and the way you're describing it, where by using you rather than whatever else is out there, it's so far ahead that it just becomes, it's very difficult to make the case not to use you. And obviously with your investors and the people you've got behind you as well, and obviously like you mentioned your like huge fundraising round as well, that obviously helps in terms of people just saying like, these guys are serious. It's not. And you mentioned that you've got some very huge clients already on board. So do you think that will help you when it comes to the war, where you have these different factors where people have already shown belief in you, have already got quite significant credibility, then you've got your experience in the tech industry, or the travel industry already as well?
I think in travel, there's a lot based on trust. You can have an amazing vision, but we put together a fantastic team of people from the industry that have wanted to make this change, that have been clamoring and fighting for this change for the last 15 years or so. And having them as part of the team, backing up the vision, as well as having someone like our X Factor, Steve Singh, founder of Concur, sold the largest business travel platform in the world back in early 2013, 2014. So there's a people who've had a lot of success. They know what they're doing, and having that team come together, it gives a lot of confidence to especially a new buyer or a Fortune 50 company that's looking at us, that yes, they could be a startup, but they really have the horsepower to pull this off. If anyone can pull this off, it should be these guys. Got amazing tech. My co-founder comes from Google, etc., and he just has built an amazing platform together. We've scaled the teams, and at the end of the day, VCs, customers, whoever you take out there, you're betting on human beings, a collective set of human beings that are going to deliver on that promise. And really, that's what it boils down to. And I've just been very fortunate that I've had an amazing team that believes in this vision. And my goal as the CEO is nothing but to surround myself with people smarter than me, right? That's the single thing about making this happen, is how do you surround yourself with people who are smarter than you and free them up so they can do the best work of their lives. And really, that's what we want to do at Spotnana. Is we're trying to build this travel platform. We believe travel can connect all of us in some way or the other. And if we can build that pleasurable experience here for travel, whether it's leisure or personal or business, however you look at it, travel at the end of the day is travel, right? Someone in London shopping to go to the US, or someone in the US shopping to go to Africa, that experience that they want to feel at the end of that shopping is the same. It doesn't matter from what part of the world you are. So really, that's the ultimate goal for us. And when customers see that this is the vision that we have, the customers that have signed up with us, the team that is behind this venture, it gives them a lot more confidence to take that leap of faith. Yeah, they could be a startup. And again, if you're well capitalized, it gives them a lot more comfort in their mind that you have a pretty long runway and you'll hopefully figure this out along the way.
And in terms of like the team you've hired as well, how have you gone about finding the right people to help you to build this out and fulfill this vision?
I think the early folks that joined have just been relationships that I've had in the industry for a long time. I've been talking about wanting to do this forever and said that one day we'll do this, one day we'll do this, and just identify these folks. Some of them 3 to 4 years even before Jan of 2020, telling them that just be patient. I'm going to start something at the right time, and then it just happened. And just you get the momentum, and then once Steve came on board, once you got all these investors, we were just able to attract some amazing talent along the way. I think having the right set of investors even resonates for someone who's looking to join you. It gives them a sense of comfort that, okay, these investors who have this track record are willing to bet in this opportunity or this idea. And I think early on, we just had even amazing customer traction. A lot of big name customers have signed up with us, and that gives someone who's looking at this opportunity a lot more comfort that, okay, this early stage, if you can have this kind of momentum and you've proven the product market fit so early on, that gives us a lot more comfort in taking a bet and joining you.
How big is your team now? How much have you scaled in terms of that side of things?
I think we're a little over 250 employees now worldwide.
And how have you found that journey as a leader yourself? Because obviously, going from like is what 3 years you said, going from you and a few early starters to huge team.
I think I have a lot to learn, to be honest. I think we have a long, long way to go. This year is all about execution and just having focus and just executing correctly. The journey, it's rightly said, it's lonely at the top. Lonely at the top, they try to sensationalize it and make it very sexy. But I assure you that sometimes you got to make decisions in a vacuum. You alone have to make decisions. You want to make sure that you don't make decisions that are one way, be able to pivot, be thoughtful, hopefully be more right than wrong. I could never say that I don't want to ever be wrong, but that's a part of the process of learning and being able to recalibrate. And my biggest takeaway of 2022, I think the biggest competitive advantage we as a company, or I personally myself, will have is becoming more self-aware. That's a very humbling process, and being mindful about that. Listening to understand and not listening to rebut, and making sure that I'm able to carry this team. There are a bunch of folks that have betted a lot on us. I want to make sure that we are able to execute and live up to that promise, because uh, there's a lot of work ahead of us, and just focusing, prioritizing what we need to do. There are 100 fires, right? I only have one hose and I can only take out three at a time. Being mindful of that, making sure we make everyone focus on that and not 100 other things. I think that's the tough part. That's where you start learning to build that discipline and that muscle, and that takes time. And there's no playbook for this. It's just something that you learn along the way, and be ready to be challenged, because if I realize that in a room that I'm not being challenged, there's something wrong in that room, and I need to make sure that I'm in a room where I'm constantly being focused or being made to be the better version of myself. That's the only way Spotnana can get where it needs to get to. I don't have all the answers. I've said that before, and my goal is to figure it out with some amazing people along this journey.
What do you do to keep making yourself a better version of yourself outside of the people you surround yourself with?
I think got some amazing mentors who just give me some very objective and constructive feedback. I think that is one thing, is to keep that dialogue open. People talk about having open communication in teams and especially peers as well. I think that's one thing that I'm eager to learn, because I think I've been told very early on by someone very wise that, Sarosh, you only have two choices in life. You either supersize your effort or downsize your ambition. And in supersizing your effort, it's not about just working harder. It's being able to take feedback and recalibrating very quickly and working smart. And working smart requires a lot of introspection, being able to pivot, being able to say that you're wrong, being able to learn. And I think that it's easier said than done. I'll be the first to admit. But if that is the intention and you put that out there, like anything else, if you're willing to work at it, you'll realize that you'll be able to move much faster, make decisions much more quicker, because then you take things in a more holistic approach when you make a decision that could be pivotal for the company. So I think that is one of those things that you know constantly look for feedback from unknown corners. You never know what you learn. And if you remind yourself, that's really like forcing yourself to remind yourself, forcing to pause before sometimes you speak, because you never know what will come out. And sometimes someone has something very wise to say, that you don't connect at that moment in time, but when you go back, you got to understand people's intentions for telling you. You've hired someone here for a reason. They're smarter than you for a reason. So then again, there's a gut check as well. And that's the balance, right? When I said it's lonely at the top, you got to know what to take, how to recalibrate that, and show up the next day again. So again, it's just work in progress.
What have some of the other hard adjustments been from what you were doing previously to now being in charge of such a huge company? Because obviously, one, you've got investors to think about, you've got a huge number of employees, but it's also your role is so different because of the scale of what you're doing.
That's a great question. I think the biggest adjustment is having a desire to build technology and then working with some of the world's smartest engineers to build it. Engineering is just complex, unlike other business functions, and making sure that the teams truly understand what we are building. What is not only the vision, but what needs to be in product today versus tomorrow. How do you ruthlessly prioritize? I think my biggest learning has been working with the product and engineering teams very closely to execute on the product and the vision that we have for the product. I think that single handedly has been a massive learning curve, because what is possible, you think that things are possible in 2 days. You think like, hey, you went to Stanford, you went to MIT, you should be able to spit this out in a week. And the reality is not that, right? Managing my expectations, again, this is for me, recalibrating myself, realizing that this is a marathon and not a sprint, for myself as well. And I think fine tuning, adjusting versus the reality of what you think it is versus what is truly possible, where you depend on your senior leadership in engineering and product to guide you along to manage expectations. And I think working with teams remotely has been a challenge, but this is the hand we've been dealt with. So we just don't complain. We like, this is the choice we made, and this is the talent where it was available at that point of time. We made the best possible decisions with what we had at that point of time, and now we need to figure out how we execute with that. So for me, it's like, most people don't even get this opportunity. We have been given this opportunity. So in my moments of frustration, I realize that this is our race. We got to run it. I can't compare myself to others, and make the most of what we have. Most people don't even get this.
Like you said there about timelines, and you're only 3 years old at the moment, right? But despite all of the success you've had so far, what are the timelines for the future? What's some of your targets you have in the future? So obviously you want to revolutionize global travel, but like what's realistic for when you can get to some of those different points?
I think this year, just to execute against some of the big launches that we have, which we'll announce later in the year, execute against them, stand up the product, deliver, and just let the volume start flowing. Because there's just so much that you will discover along the way, right? There are so many other functions that you'll have to fire up. One product, one is engineering. Product works, But then there are all these other pillars that support product that are nothing to do with engineering, whether it's finance or accounting, and just the servicing side of the business that has to scale up as well as you continue to scale. So I think the first focus is on making sure that the product can sing at least where we need it to, and it'll never be done. I keep saying to the team that this is never good enough, and because we have a vision of what travel should be. I keep asking the team, if Steve Jobs had to do travel, how would he do it? That's your only benchmark in life. If Apple did travel, how would they do it? And that's where we want to be. And that doesn't happen in 2 years or 3 years. That's a journey. And we have to remind ourselves that, every day, keep inching forward, and, continue building in that manner. So I think initially the focus is some of these big customers, get them live, get them up and ready, start transacting, and then continue to iterate.
And like, even with all your experience before you started this, have there been any pivots in terms of where you thought that this is what people needed, but actually, as you put the product out there, you got different feedback that maybe surprised you still?
I think the biggest discovery more than a pivot was when we architected the platform. We had architected it in such a way that we wanted to offer this to corporations to manage their business travel. But what COVID showed us early on is as the industry got decimated, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of travel agencies in the world that use the same technology. All of them more or less have the same technology. They could never differentiate on the technology because that technology was available to everybody else. It's like saying in the CRM space, Salesforce, any of us could buy. Yes, there are other 4 or 5 other players, but in the enterprise space, Salesforce rules the roost, right? It's pretty apparent. They're like the biggest, most well-known brand. So similarly, in that space, Concur was one of the leading technology providers on the booking tool space. And we realized that the analogy that I'd like to give here is similar to Jeff Bezos. They built this fantastic e-commerce website. They kept on scaling. And as they continued to scale, they had issues. Systems crashed. And then they realized, like, can someone help us build a better infrastructure? And what did they do? They land up building AWS for themselves. And they're like, hold on. If I can do this for myself, imagine I could offer it to there are so many other use cases out there. Make that available to everybody else. That's exactly the way it went about for Spotnana. Is when we built this for ourselves, for corporations, etc. We're like, but there are all these other TMCs like us that service customers. Why not make this platform and make it available to all of them? Why not offer this as a consumption based model to them? Because during COVID, all their businesses got decimated, but they still had to pay millions of dollars to all these tech travel vendors that had locked them in these licensing contracts, etc. But imagine you take the entire stack. Today, they use 20 different pieces of technology to run a single company. Imagine you took all of that and made that available like AWS to any of these travel management companies out there and said, listen, mine is a consumption based model. You'll only pay me when you make money. That's when they realize, like, oh wow, this is very different. We've never done this. I'm using paying all these other different vendors to do all of this. Now I have a one-stop shop and I can innovate on top of you. That was never possible. All these other systems were closed systems. They would never let me do or adjust anything. I had to take it the way it is and offer it to my customer. You're telling me you can do a lot more. And the business model is very different. Your incentives are aligned with mine. If I make money, if someone travels with me, you make money, Spotnana. That's what resonated. So more than a pivot is just like the architecture just expanded where, like, we're not build it for ourselves. We make this instance be available to anybody else as well. And that's really where during the pandemic, some of the things that we took into account and were thoughtful that this is going to take a little longer. But if we do this correctly and build this truly like a platform that you can only call yourself a platform when other people use you and can make more money than you do. Otherwise, people like to call themselves a platform, and this is where the whole premise is. This is what we need to execute against for this year. Make sure that not only we use it for ourselves, but our partners that are white labeling this and using it, they should be able to consume it and deliver this through a set of APIs. And that's where the true power of Spotnana will lie.
I love that. So one of the things I like to ask people now towards the end is there anybody that you'd love to shout out? So you've mentioned Steve Singh as a mentor. Have you got any, like a couple other people who'd say really made a huge impact on your growth as an entrepreneur?
I think there are so many people like that, right? It's definitely my wife who's constant prodding and poking. It's never good enough, but always in a good way. So I think they just that self awareness comes from there, right? Because your closest relationships are a mirror to you. Most people outside, even at work, might not be willing to say as much to you as someone personal might. So I think folks that have been closest to me on the personal front have been just been how would I say, a good barometer for me and always keep me in check and keep pushing me to do better. And obviously, my co-founder, who took a leap of faith and left an amazing gig at Google to pursue this with me. And we met by chance, and this is one of those things that I like to say in a funny manner. We met behind a laundromat in Palo Alto, and here we are 3 years later. But I think it's just one of those things. And life is unexpected. So for the early believers, as I call them, you know,
Yeah.
they
Can,
believed
can
in
you
me.
tell us more about how you met your co-founder? Is that actually how you met him?
Yes, I did. I got introduced to him through his previous co-founder, and we met really behind a laundromat. And I remember meeting Shikhar the first day. It was May 22, 2019, and we just hit it off from the moment we met. And he was committed. He'd come prepared. Someone who'd never been in travel, but he just saw the opportunity and he realized the scale of what is there to build. He took that upon a challenge and continued to carry this forward. And I think that's one thing that sometimes you just have to believe, right? And you have to believe just on an idea and on a faith and a promise. And that's really what happened with both of us. And I'm very fortunate for that.
Let's say somebody listening right now wants to hear more about your story or Spotnana's story. Where should they go to? Where should they pay attention to?
This is a story as of yet. We still have a lot to prove. But I think my biggest takeaway has been that you got to be resilient. Especially entrepreneurship is about resilient. It's about riding the bad times more than the good ones. I've just been so humbled over the last few years. And when I say Spotnana is a 20-year journey, I really mean that. Just had so many things that I wish I could do differently. But today I realize that I'm glad they're not, because those have helped build the muscle for today what we're doing. And it's just something that you got to keep pivoting, keep learning, and just being resilient to ride that out, because it's really a mental muscle that you have to build internally. Because sometimes when good things happen, no one realizes as to what it has taken to get there. It's, oh wow, sensationalize this, but no one knows the blood, sweat, and tears behind that moment. So it's a shout out to all the entrepreneurs. Everyone's hustling out there. You don't know someone else's story. You never know everything behind all the smiles. There's a lot of pain, which is why I say pain is equal to growth. There is no shortcut to that. So I'm still figuring this out myself.
And if people want to learn more about you or Spotnana, where should they go to?
Learn more about the company. I mean, it's everything's available online, on spotnana.com. But I think we've relatively been quiet. I think hopefully this year we'll make some more share some more wins, share a little bit more about our customers, etc. So I think this is a big year ahead. So if they're watching that space, they can look online on our website.
Perfect. So thank you so much for coming on today. Have you got any final words for the audience?
No, I'm just glad I had a chance to kick off the year with this podcast. I think you've interviewed some amazing folks that have some interesting stories to tell. And I think the biggest thing about entrepreneurship is just being able to give back, share whatever little nuggets of information that we have. Not sure if how helpful, at least from my perspective, but I'm just glad I got a chance to speak.